welcome to the Keys to Therapy. I'm Samantha, a licensed therapist, and I'm here to teach therapists what they didn't learn in grad school, aka all the important stuff. So, today's episode, I'm going to be talking about what to do when you see clients in public. So, I know when I was in school, if this topic was mentioned at all, maybe it came up in like an internship class or something like that, it was basically like, don't talk to them, don't say hi to them, don't acknowledge them, just keep it moving. Now, that's true, but it's not that simple. So, first, let's go over a little bit about why we can't approach clients, because that part's right. Like, number one, we cannot approach clients in public if we see them. The main reason is because it'll violate their confidentiality. You know, even if they're by themselves, you still can't approach them. Just be like, hey, how's it going? So, and if they're with a group of people, for sure, you definitely can't. So there's really no situation that I can think of that it would be okay to approach a client in public. And I think, you know, again, confidentiality is number one. We want to make sure that they feel protected, that they understand that we are not gonna blow up their spot and, you know, they have to explain who we are, anything like that. For some clients, they want to keep therapy as private and separate from certain parts of their life as possible. You know, maybe they've never gone to therapy. Maybe they're in a job that really would look down on them, or have family that would look down on them for going. So they really want to make sure that that part is private. And, you know, again, as far as HIPAA and confidentiality in general goes, we're supposed to, even if they want it to be known to everybody, we still can't really acknowledge who we are. And I think sometimes that's tough because when you really like your clients and you see them in public, it feels weird to see somebody you recognize and not be able to be like, hi, how's it going? So I think for most therapists, especially in the beginning of your career, it's kind of tough to figure out how do you navigate those situations. Especially if you live in an area that's a little bit smaller. So you have a few ways of dealing with it if you are the one that spots the client first. So you can do kind of the polite smile you would do to some people, it depends on where you live. But some people in public, you know, kind of like and keep walking. Sometimes it's best to just kind of, you're in one aisle of the grocery store, you happen to spot them, and you just are like, I'll hit up that aisle at the end and try to move around so that you don't even have to be in a position where you have to make eye contact or anything like that. You can also just pretend you don't see them, I guess, but that feels kind of rude. So I think avoidance tends to be good in this situation. And also just like a quick, polite, and that's it. You can kind of leave it up to the client if they want to talk to you or not. So I've had a few different encounters over the years with clients in public. And they've ranged from really awkward to very crazy. So one time I'm going to Target, running there really quick before I head home. I lived 30 minutes from where I worked, so I never really saw clients out in public too much. I worked in kind of a rural area and I lived closer to the city. And I was like, let me just stop here really quick after work. And I'm in line and somebody hugs me from behind. And I'm like, what is going on? And it was a teenager who was in the IOP group for substance abuse that I was doing 3 times a week. And she hugs me and looks at her friend and goes, this is my drug counselor. And the friend's like, cool. So I was like, hi, how's it going? And she was like, great, oh my gosh. And then it was my turn to pay and stuff. And she was like, I'll see you tomorrow in group. I was like, have a good night. So sometimes you can't stop clients from coming up to you. I was by myself, so I didn't have to explain anything to anybody else or whatever. But it was just super unexpected. And the client was excited to see me and didn't care who knew how she knew me. But that was up to her, right? I wouldn't have gone up to her in line and been like, hey, why didn't you show up in group yesterday? We missed you. You know, it's court ordered. So yeah, probably not. So I think to keep in mind that sometimes clients are going to see you and they're gonna be excited to see you and they're gonna approach you and they're gonna talk your ear off or they're gonna hug you or whatever the situation is or whatever they think the relationship is with you guys, especially younger ones. Sometimes I find that they're more likely to have those physical boundaries crossed than some of the older ones typically. But I've also had an encounter on the opposite side of the spectrum. I was walking through a grocery store once, and I'm walking this way and a client's walking that way, and he was just like this, just pushing the cart, not even looking anywhere near my way. So I just kept moving too, and I saw him for an appointment literally the next day. And I was like, hey, so obviously we must live in the same neighborhood or something. And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, I saw you at the grocery store yesterday. And he was like, I didn't see you. And I was like, okay, well, saw you. We were in the same aisle, totally fine. Just know if we're out in public, I cannot say hi to you. I will not speak to you. I will not approach you. I will not violate your confidentiality in any way. If you want to say hi, I'll say hi back, but I can initiate that. So if we ever run into each other again and you're with your family or, you're by yourself, I am not going to say anything. So he was like, oh, okay, great. Yeah, I just didn't want to make it awkward. And yeah, so it went from totally ignored me to ran up and hugged me. And I've had a few different ones in between. It's always awkward. I don't know any other word for it. It's always awkward. Sometimes it's really nice when you get to see a client kind of like out in the wild and you're like, oh, that's their daughter they always talk about, or, something, but that doesn't mean that you can go up and talk to them. So the biggest thing to remember with that is don't approach a client, let them approach you. Also, if they approach you, try to keep the conversation at a minimum and not give anything away. So especially again, if they're with other people, not like, oh, I'll see you at your appointment with me next week, or, stuff like that. Try not to say any of that. And it's going to feel awkward because we know them and we know so much about them. And it's really weird to be in a situation like that and not really be able to talk. But this is kind of what we signed up for, I guess. So getting used to that can be tough. I would also say it may be a good idea if you are somebody who is out and about a lot and you tend to maybe go to like a lot of public festivals or things. I mean, again, you can run into people at the grocery store, but if you tend to just be out and about a lot, it may be helpful to talk to the people around you to let them know not to ask you too many questions if you run into somebody. So I know that I've run into people before and I've been with my husband. And so if he sees somebody approach me or talk to me, he just, start kind of walking away a little bit. And then doesn't even ask me, who is that? How do you know them? Nothing. If I offer up information, cool. If I don't, oh well. He's just like, don't need to know. It doesn't automatically mean that he'll know they're a client. It's just kind of, it could be people I've worked with or, somebody in the neighborhood that he hasn't seen or whatever. So I think it's sometimes helpful if you know you're gonna be out and about with like the same person, your family or roommate or whatever else that's gonna be close. Let them know like, hey, sometimes some people might approach me. Just don't ask me about them. I'll tell you if I feel like it. And that's all you can do. It is helpful to sometimes to have a statement that you would make if a client approaches you and they're with people, because sometimes they're caught off guard too, right? And they'll see somebody, oh my God, hi. And then it's like, oh crap, I'm with this friend or I'm with this person. So if somebody's like, oh, how do you guys know each other? You can leave it up to the client. But I think an easy go-to is like, oh, we used to work together, period. So if you feel like the client's really struggling and they look awkward and they're getting kind of anxious about it, that's a pretty easy go-to just say like, oh, we work together or we used to work together. So you're not lying. You do work together or you have worked together, but they don't know under what capacity. They're just going to assume it's at whatever job the client has or has had. So then you can just kind of save it. Be like, oh, well, have a good day, you guys. Got a lot to do, and just end the conversation quickly. I think sometimes it's nice to have at least like one key phrase in mind in case you're caught off guard, the client's caught off guard, there's people that they're with, they start talking to you and haven't really thought it through. So you don't have to have that exact statement, but have something that's pretty neutral in mind in case that question gets asked. Something else I would say too, I think it's really if you live anywhere, but especially if you live in a more rural area that's smaller where you're gonna run into the same people. Or if you are, again, somebody who you go out and about a lot and you do a lot of stuff in the area you live in, it may be good for you in the intake to address with the client, hey, here's, just want to like cover this rule really quick. If I see you out in public, I'm really not allowed to say hi or approach you. You could say hi to me, I'm just not allowed to initiate it. And you can explain to them why. Because then if I say hi and you're with people and they may not know you're in therapy, it's just like a whole awkward thing. So just know, if I see you in public, if I don't say hi to you or don't come up to you, it's not because I don't care. It's because I'm technically not allowed to. And let them know that. You know, I've heard of stories where therapists have just completely ignored the client in a public setting, and the client's offended because they don't understand what the rules are. Or maybe they would have liked that polite smile and some kind of acknowledgement instead of you just completely ignoring them. And you don't want to do damage accidentally to the therapeutic relationship because you were following the rules. So you could still follow the rules, but just do it in a way that's kinder. So I think by setting that boundary from the first session potentially, then the client is already aware of what's going on. Or if you forget to, or it doesn't seem as important to, or whatever else in the first session, maybe the client brings up, oh, I'm going to this festival this weekend, and you know you're going. That's when you could be like, just so you know, if I run into you, I'm not allowed to say hi, and explain that to them. And, you know, most clients, they get it. They might be like, well, I'm still going to say hi to you. Okay, well, that's on you. That's your choice. But let them know that you can initiate that contact just so that they don't get the wrong idea. You know, we see a lot of people who have trauma, have abandonment issues, and they've been through a lot. And sometimes they may feel rejected if they don't understand why we're not talking to them in public. So even though the most obvious answer of how to handle seeing clients in public is don't talk to them, there's so many different layers to this. So wanted today to be a quick and easy video, wanted it to cover this topic because I've seen people post occasionally about it, and most of the answers are very harsh and black and white. And like I said, you could still follow the rules, but a polite smile is not breaking the rules. You know, them coming up and talking to you and you acknowledging you know them isn't wrong if they've initiated that contact. Just keep it as brief as possible. Talk to your clients ahead of time if you can, and debrief if you do see them in public. You know, maybe you're a parent and you have a small child and you're like, hey, you know, I live in a smaller area. I've seen this client a couple different places. If I'm with my child, like, can you not approach me? Just, she has questions. It's chaotic. It's like a lot, you know, and maybe you set a further boundary of not only am I not going to acknowledge you first, but if you acknowledge me and I'm with my children, I'm not going to say anything. I can't engage if that's what you're comfortable with. But ultimately, if you can discuss this with the client either before it happens or after it happens, explain what's going on, talk to them about how it'll be handled. I think you're also helping set them up in a way that will be better for your relationship with them in the long run. So hope that helps. I know, again, quick and easy video, but I've seen just way too many people posting about this lately, and I figured I would do just a little video on it so it doesn't feel like it is super black and white, because like most stuff in this field, it's not. Even though school tries to tell us all of it is, it's not. So yeah, hopefully that helps you guys. And I recently started an email list, so I'm going to be putting on some workshops and events and things like that in the future. So if you want to sign up just to stay aware of what's going on, maybe get some discount codes and stuff like that when things launch, the link for that is below. Otherwise, subscribe, follow along with what's coming next, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.